Hello, everybody. Are y'all having a good day today? Because I mean, we're celebrating because, yeah, let me tell you, I was supposed to have a huge map display about all of this, and then I went to go pick it up from the printers, and it turned out that the dog ate their homework, the aliens landed at midnight, and they literally ran out of the material to print the map on right before they ran my project, so you know, imagine this thing here. So I've had to create an alternative visual expression of what it's been like, because see, we're celebrating. Because after years and decades of work, last week we got our resolution passed by both houses of the California legislature. Yay, we did it! We did it, you know. So we planned, you know, this presentation with talking about the dream, and we moved from dreaming it to completing the first step to build it. So my visual presentation is what has this process been like for the last 15 years, 20 years? I think you'll all identify it was a lot like this. And we do that for about 5 years, and then we get a headache and we take a break, and then we come back and we do it again. And then this time we got that close to complete passage, and Schwarzenegger vetoed it. Anyway, and then, you know, amazingly, we started again in 2016 with a threadbare staff, a highly limited budget, and all the obstacles just disappeared. It was amazing. And we ended up getting a vote that was overwhelming. We ended up with 42 co-authors. So that means that 44 members of the legislature said that they liked it so much they wanted their name attached to that. That represents over a third of the legislatures. So we have made a huge accomplishment and a huge breakthrough. Yay! So what are we doing? Well, we're basically trying to recreate the transportation and recreation infrastructure of California. By the fact that we want to have a master plan created so that all of the non-motorized trails everywhere in the state will someday become part of a seamless, unified network, so that you can get from your neighborhood to the recreational trail by walking or by hiking or by equestrian or by maybe some form of green transportation that hasn't even been yet invented. But we're creating a completely independent network. We think the motorized vehicle network is a wonderful thing, but we want a completely independent network that will someday rival that network. And of course, you know, we think it's going to happen, what, next year? No.
When the car dies.
We're beginning a process that's going to take a century. It's our children's grandchildren that will realize the full effect of this. And yet, immediately, we all walk, a lot of us bike. So every little piece, every little time we connect the dots together, we're making a huge improvement. Now our organization is the California Guild, and we are a nonprofit 501c8 fraternal organization that can do direct political lobbying. So we don't beg for money. We go to the legislature and demand it. You know, sometimes they are right. Anyway, you know, we have this attitude, positive attitude, that we create things. So our organization was capable of getting this resolution passed through the legislature. And given that amazing accomplishment, I want to now bring up the person who is responsible for keeping our organization, the California Guild, moving forward, who, had he not done this work, we wouldn't be here today with this huge accomplishment. Please, our president of the California Guild, Bob McFarland.
Boy, he makes me out to be some kind of celebrity.
Oh, he's a rock star.
We obviously picked somebody that doesn't have a lot of enthusiasm for this project. We apologize for that. When Ken first came up with this idea, or at least approached me with this idea of a trail system and promoting agritourism, that's how we were bottling this at the time. Agritourism, I said, what is that? How do you grow a tourist? And that was many, many years ago. And there's always been strong support for agritourism, and now the California Trails Plan. We have incredible support, as Ken told you. 44 authors?
Of 120 legislatures, 44 co-authors.
Well, I wonder if they all got in the elevator at once.
Election year.
Yeah, so I want to talk just a minute about the Guild, because that's our vehicle for this project. The Guild is a membership organization, a fraternity, and we have about 5,000 members in 85 communities in California. Most of those chapters have their own halls, which really is such a wonderful mechanism for us to get messages out and so forth and so on. Along with the California Trails Project this year, I'm sure Diana's going to talk to you perhaps about some other exciting news we've had in California, but I'm really excited about this project. Now, looking at me today, you know, what's that song by the Beatles? Will you still feed me? Will you still need me when I'm 64? Well, you're looking at it. They wrote that song about me many years ago. And I used to be a hiker. I was a hiker, believe it or not. I'm not so much anymore. I'm more like, if I go anywhere, it's to get new batteries for the remote control. And when I was a hiker, Ken, hiking in the northern states, you used to have to, you'd be careful about bears. Of course, I'm sure all of you that are hikers need to be careful about bears. And what they used to tell us was to make sure you wear bells so that you can alert the bears when you're in their territory. You don't surprise them, because that's when you get into trouble. So all of us hiking those days used to wear bells, and the rangers and so forth would tell us if you're in black bear country, it's not so bad, but be careful when you're in grizzly country. And of course, I don't know how to tell when you're in black bear country and when you're in grizzly country, and so the ranger explained it that you look at the bear scat. And you can always tell a black bear, because a black bear has berries in their scat. And I said, so how do you tell a grizzly bear's in the area? He says, well, they have bells in their scat. We're really excited to be behind this project, and we hope that you folks will be excited by this project too and get involved. It really is a dream. It's a dream, and we're reaching for that. We're just in the very beginning stages of this. This is probably a 20-year project.
Century project.
Century?
100-year project.
I don't know if I'm going to be there then or not, but regardless of,
there won't be any more fuel for.
then we're going to have to
Motorized,
learn how to walk, aren't we? This project is, through Ken's passion for it, has really captured my imagination as well. I have kids, and those kids someday will have grandchildren, and it's just a wonderful thought that they will be able to get where they want to go without getting into an automobile. And God knows what an automobile would look like or be like to them. It'll probably hover over the ground and not touch the ground. And we'll all have to, learn how to drive those vehicles.
I will be smart.
You hope they're smart. Well, I don't trust these, cars that are supposed to go and take you where you want to go. I don't trust, I wouldn't get in a car like that, I don't think. But I would walk down one of Ken's trails and feel confident.
I don't know, maybe I can get some help, because a long time ago, I noticed that when BART went underground, they were going to make a park, but then there were streets cutting through it. So I got a petition, we closed them all up, so we have a loading park in Berkeley. But then we noticed that Santa Fe right-of-way wasn't happening, and some people wanted to build very dense housing, but it was already pretty dense, and so we got that going. It had to go through BART. So then that could connect with the loading park and go connect with Albany, which goes through to Richmond. So those are sort of bike paths, but but now there's a biker group, and they're very competitive, and so they want to cut off the end of this Ohlone Greenway that goes across University and down, so you can go over the pedestrian bridge and go over. They want to cut that and make something that goes on the median strip downtown. There are all these median strips. We have to breathe gas from for at least half of your 100 years. And they end up in centers of town and stuff. So what I want, I'm sorry to talk too long, but what I would like to do is I'd like to see if I can catch up and get a call, get some help, because when that comes back to transportation, they don't need to mess with what we've got. If they want to go do some fangled thing like that with cars going by and people, you know, buses, then let them do it, but I don't want them to mess with what we've already got.
Can I address that in
Yes.
just a little while? That's a
Yeah,
very
let's
good point.
let Ken come back to that, and Ken's the person to work with.
I
on
just
that.
wanted to know, yeah, so I can
Sure.
catch you later.
Yeah.
So,
I will
we need to
address
get
it
you
when I
some
do.
cards if you don't have some already.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
think
my
that's-
information is all over the
Perfect.
literature over there.
Well, what you're talking about, which is the closing remarks that I wanted to make today, is that we live in an age when we all must work together.
Yeah.
We cannot be isolated in our homes. We have to get out and understand what the word community means. We have to come together just like we are today in this room, because the powers that be, I don't think they like it so much when we get together. I don't think they like it so much when we have our own projects and our own plans and our own dreams. They want to tell us what our dreams are. You know, they want us to sit in front of our television sets and learn. That's our educator. So this is a project that really allows us to work together on something of great value for not just this generation, but for generations on to come. So I'm very happy to be a part of this project, and I hope the rest of you will join also. There's guilds all over California. Please join us.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Thank you. So now I want to bring up the person who has done all of the nuts and bolts work of getting this resolution passed. And this is our legislative consultant lobbyist, Diana Ruday. I've had experience working in the halls of power at the state level, and I can tell you that she did a masterful job of maneuvering this through the labyrinth of the legislature. You know, there's two approaches to the legislature. You can either show up in force and with signs out on the steps of the state capitol, you know, or you can very quietly sort of work your way in there and get to, you know, and it's all about knowing the people. She knows the people, she knows how it worked, and she is the one who is really responsible for making this happen, for this success. And now she's going to fill you full of lots of details and stuff about the nuts and bolts of how it works. Please welcome Diana Ruday.
Thank you very much. Let me know if you can't hear me. My voice isn't normally too loud, and I have a cold, but I'll try. Anyway, what we did this year is have a legislative resolution. It's Senate Joint Resolution 8. And it was just chaptered, which means made official. It's chapter 146, just yesterday, so that's why we're really celebrating today. And as Ken said, it was passed by the legislature, both houses. And let me just tell you a little bit, for those of you who don't know the difference between a resolution and a bill. A bill, or legislation, regular legislation, amends law, like amends the you know, different codes, like the Food and Ag Code or the Labor Code. But a resolution doesn't actually amend the law, but it states the legislature's intent and commitment to do something. So in this case, the resolution, Senate Joint Resolution 8, we found very fortunate to find a very friendly author, Senator Ben Allen from Santa Monica. And Senator Allen is himself a hiking and biking enthusiast. And as soon as his staff heard what our purpose it was for this resolution, she bit it like a fish on bait. So we were really happy about that. And what the resolution does is it calls the governor, on the governor, to designate the Department of Parks and Recreation, which by the way is responsible for all the state's non-motorized trails in California, and Caltrans, which deals with the motorized trails mostly, to work with other relevant agencies and organizations to develop a California master plan for non-motorized trails. As KD normally calls it, he says it's connecting the dots between the existing non-motorized trails that are in the state now and connecting them to communities so that the communities can access those trailheads easily without having to get in a car. And just as you were saying. So that's the goal of this particular project. And there's no deadline on it, but it's a commitment to move toward that goal. And as Ken said, the legislators supported the idea. And KD, I hope you will talk later about what the California Guild is doing. Some of the chapters, 2 of our chapters, the Chico Community Guilds and Taylorsville chapter are holding, are supporting it, and also KD is planning some workshops around the state so that the California Guild can be involved in helping to craft the goals of the non-motorized recreational trails project. And we seek your involvement. Any ideas you have, we welcome them. I understand you have a certain issue that you're concerned about, and we'd certainly like to talk to you about that. The other thing I just wanted to mention is there are economic benefits to non-motorized trails as well. One of the economic benefits was cited by the National Home Builders Association, who said that those communities that have access to non-motorized trails experience increased property values. So that's certainly a big advantage. And also the outdoor industry, sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Outdoor Industry Association said that there are benefits to outdoor recreation of 691,000 jobs in California, 92 billion in consumer spending, 30.4 billion in wages and salaries, and 6.2 billion in state and local tax revenue. So it's a worthy project, and also it's been supported in the legislature for one reason was the California's the reducing greenhouse gas initiative, which was from 2006. There was a bill that called for goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in California, and non-motorized trails is one way to do that. So, anyway, if you have any questions, let me know.
Is there funding from at the state
Oh, I'm glad
level
you
yet?
asked that. Thank you.
Is it just tune in for that?
Yes, there is a bill, let me get my notes on that. There's a bill that's
AB
going through the
18.
legislature now, it's AB 18. And that bill, let's see, it's AB 18, and it designates $45 million to build, let's see, to provide non-motorized infrastructure development enhancements that promote new or alternative access to parks, waterways, outdoor recreational pursuits, and forested and other natural environments. It's called the California Clean Water, Climate, Coastal Protection, and Outdoor Access for All Act of 2018. So it'll be a ballot initiative. A ballot initiative that will be on the 2018 ballot. So look for that. And if it passes, which we hope it will, it'll provide funding for this purpose starting January of 2019.
Funding to communities?
Yes, funding for this kind of effort.
Not just on state properties, but to get to the properties.
Yeah, right, funding that could be used through grants for that purpose to increase and expand our existing non-motorized recreational trails. There's also the cap and trade funds. I don't know how many of you know, cap and trade is a law that allows polluters to have a cap on how much greenhouse gas pollution they can emit, and above that cap they have to pay into the cap and trade account to support other ways to clean our air. So
just a note on AB 18, it's not just communities, it's also fraternal organizations and
Right.
others that can apply. And it's
Right.
all spelled out, it's online, you can look it up under legislature.gov.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right,
So it's
yeah,
there.
right.
Whoops.
Okay.
Repeat the name of that bill again, it was kind of long.
I'll have to look at it myself. It was long, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's AB 18, Assembly
that's
Bill
good enough.
18, if you can find it that way.
Okay.
Just Google Assembly Bill 18 by Eduardo Garcia. That's an assemblyman who's the lead author on that particular bill.
Is there funding for the the master plan to parks and to Caltrans?
Well, there isn't any funding associated with the resolution, but this AB 18 would be a funding source, as would the cap and trade. So the funding does exist, but it would need to be applied for through those avenues.
Mhm. Is there likely to be opposition from some quarter to this?
Well, the quarters that don't believe in global warming, I won't mention names, have some problems, but generally I think it's got broad-based support. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Diana. So we've been talking about the political side of our work here. And as Diana mentioned, one of our big things that we're just getting ready to launch into is cap and trade funding. We're going to wander into that swamp, and we're going to get billions of dollars for this someday. I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm not saying next year, but someday we will get that, because we are right down the middle of what the purpose of those funds were created for. We're going to create a green, non-polluting, non-carbon transportation infrastructure that's going to have all these benefits. I mean, we could go on and on talking about the benefits of this. It's amazing. It touches every part of our life in a positive way, and ultimately it involves every segment of our society in a positive way. So ultimately, the people who are opposing it aren't opposing it out of real things. They're just concerned. They're just opposing it out of some sort of theoretical political position. So that's going to pass away. We're all going to be working together on this. It's going to be a long process, and we welcome your involvement in it. But that's only half of what we're doing. We haven't even talked about the other half, which is the real grassroots part of it. And there's information about this up here, because we have, as Bob said, 85 chapters across the state. So in local chapters and in communities, we're sponsoring regional conferences to bring together the people, the same way y'all are here together. We're going to bring together the people who are passionate about trails development. And that's something specifically that I want to mention. We're having a conference September 29th at the Castro Valley Community Center. It'll be the first regional Bay Area conference. And it's going to focus on the concept of bringing all of the trails within the Bay Area into a unified network to connect the dots, to envision a transportation structure in the future where 4-lane bicycle paths are a common occurrence. Think about it. If you've got a lot of people traveling down a corridor on a bicycle, there's some people that are going to want to go at 30 miles an hour, and there's some people that are going to want to go at 10 miles an hour. And then there's other people that are going to want to walk at 5 miles an hour. And we have to find ways to accommodate all of these various forms of transportation in a safe way. Because that's what we're doing, is we're creating an independent network that's separate from the motorways, that merges with existing transportation infrastructure, such as the existing motorways or BART or other forms, but is an independent system itself. And really, the future is so potentially big, we can't even see it at the moment. We can see parts of it, but that's okay, because that's what we're doing. We're just connecting the dots as we can, learning as we go, but we're beginning to plan on the level that the interstate highway system was created at. And that's what we're doing here today, and that's what we're going to be doing at this conference. That's why this conference is going to be a historic event, because it'll be the first time that these people, professionals involved, got together specifically with the concept of creating a network of this magnitude. So what we have, this conference is September 29th in the Bay Area. In January 6th, we have a regional conference in Elk Grove at one of our local chapters, which is going to focus specifically on equine and equestrian issues, because we feel it's a total violation of humanity that a form of transportation that has existed for millennia has been marginalized within a century just by motor vehicles. And we're not saying everybody should start riding horses or having horse-drawn buggies, but let's honor these ways of doing it, because they are green. They are non-carbon emitting, and we may need them more than we think someday, So let's find ways to accommodate this. And there may be forms of transportation that don't exist right now that are going to appear that we need to accommodate within these trails network. So, but let me talk a little bit about my vision for the ultimate trail network, the super trail. The super trail network would have 4 bicycle lanes, 2 in each direction, that would be 4 foot wide each, which is slightly larger than, a foot larger than the minimum allowed by Caltrans on a class 1. And so you'd have 2 4-foot lanes going each direction. You'd have a 4-foot median that could be for getting off if you have an emergency, for making a left-hand turn, something like that. So then you would have a 2-foot separation, and then you would have 4-foot walking lanes on either side of that, okay? You know, 2 4-foot walking lanes, a 2-foot median, 4-foot, 2 pathways, 4 foot in the center. The total width of that is 32 feet.
Wow.
32 feet is about the width of an average suburban street being built currently. Nobody blinks an eye about creating this street and developments all over the state.
Got the cement?
What? Well, now that's another thing. See, we have lots of paving options here. Well, they could be asphalt. That certainly, you know, depends. We're getting more into an engineering level, but there are a lot of alternatives for asphalt that are very, very reasonable. The decomposed granite, certain kinds of slurries, things that are more permeable than asphalt. But a lot of it's going to depend upon the volume of use, the type of vehicles that are being used on it. So that's an engineering question that's going to have to come down the road. But certainly, we want to minimize the use of non-porous surfaces wherever possible. So this is it. We're doing the political side of the equation. We're doing the social action side of the equation through the regional conferences. And honestly, on the political side of things right at the moment, we got caught a little flat-footed because, like I said, we're used to 15, 20 years of beating the head against the wall, and suddenly the water's parted for us. And now we're going, whoa, what do we do next? So I'm really interested to hear ideas that any of you might have. I'll be happy to answer questions, but ideas that you might have about how we pursue the next level of political involvement. Certainly we're going to lobby the governor. We're going to continue to work with Senator Allen or any of the other co-authors. We need to figure out how to get into cap and trade funding. Help, please help, we're ready, and we need to expand out to a wider group of people. Yes?
Is one of your ideas to tear down a lot of these roads out there, like in the, in the forest? I heard that the forest sometimes have a bunch of streets that go through it.
Well, that's
roads.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the idea of taking away more land to create more roads. Is there some way that some of the roads that are there could be decommissioned and made into?
Okay, that is a process that is happening already. She's speaking specifically about roadways within the national forests,
Yes.
which are federally managed, and there are hundreds of thousands of miles of roadways. They're mostly for timber extraction. And the Forest Service, it is a federal Forest Service decision. So it's a different political process than what we're doing, because we're operating on the state level right at the moment. But we do have dialogue with the Forest Service, and they are in the process of decommissioning many of these roads and finding better ways to manage the forests. Although some of these certainly will become recreational trails as part of our plan. It's just that's planning that's going to have to start happening. Any of you that wants to start engaged in that, hey, there's a gig, So, but yeah, it is a process that is happening. There's this huge movement in process. When I say we're doing this, it's like we are doing this. The construction of trails is happening right now. We have already invested millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in these trails, but we have never done so with the concept of connecting them together. They're mostly isolated projects that are beautiful in and among themselves, but are limited in terms of their full potential impact because of the lack of connectivity. So connectivity is a big part of what we're focusing on. And just to give you a little interesting little historical note, trails development really has been driven more in California by the Parks Department. And in the 70s, the California Parks Department was mandated for developing recreational trails networks. So they are the ones who have the most experience in actual building trails. Caltrans is working on it, but they're behind where parks are. So it's interesting that our resolution calls for parks to be the agency that creates the initial phase of this master plan. And we think that's really significant because we want people that are focusing on having a beautiful, wonderful experience to be creating the first levels of the master plan versus the engineers that are going to make it look like a little, you know, the LA River, you know. I mean, that are going to keep it safe, and yes, they need to be included. But we're talking about driving this revolution in California transportation from the recreational point of view. And I think that's a real interesting concept of how this has evolved. So, yeah, any other questions?
Well, it doesn't seem like it's essentially a local grassroots problem on each level, because, you know, as much as I'd like to bike to Los Angeles from here, you know, I don't relish the thought of a 32 wide lane parallel to Highway 1 across the along the coast, or riding up over the Grapevine, or, you know, so,
well,
you know, I mean, it's,
right.
You know, do we really need, first of all, a trail all the way from here to Sacramento for bikes? I mean, it can happen, but, you know, around Sacramento and the local areas, around the Bay Area, isn't that,
that's already
everything
been,
starts local?
It's already in the planning phase, what you just described. There are already people that are doing that plan for connecting the Bay Area to Sacramento. And they're doing it more along a recreational trail medium. So what I described to you as the 32-foot, that would be a heavy traffic corridor, you know, where you're talking about moving volumes of people, almost like what we move on our motorways and our freeways. How are we going to get people to their jobs and, you know, from wherever they're living to other places?
Well, let's say you have a recreational trail from here to Sacramento. Would you go up along the Delta through the colorful,
that's the
Delta
current route,
country?
yeah. See, that gets into our plan to use our original plan to use the Central Valley levee floodway system as the basis for a network of trails to develop an agritourism network, which would connect people into local farms and ranches, would actually become a huge tourist destination similar to the Camino de Santiago. Are people familiar with this? Yeah, so, which is also, there's a group of people that are working on creating a Mission Trails network that would actually mimic the Camino de Santiago completely. So, but similar things where people use human power to get themselves to their tourist destination. And anytime, if you've ever been involved with EIR work in terms of real estate development or economic development, the one thing that can never really be addressed in the EIR that people have to just kind of paper over is the impact of automobiles to deliver consumers to their destination. There's just, you know, you can mitigate it, but you never really fully address it. So if we're creating an economic model that's going to deliver consumers to their destination without a carbon footprint, we've just eliminated the most major impediment to that in terms of long-term growth, whether it's for tourism or any other kind of thing. Yes.
Looking at rail routes, which are nice grades. And
Right.
Rails to trails.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rails to Trails is probably the premier organization in the nation for doing this kind of work. They're an amazing group. Laura Cohen gave an incredible presentation at our first conference in Chico, where she described, it was so visual, it just woke me up, between ride-sharing applications, Lyft and Uber and whatever else is going to follow, and with the development of robot-driven low-speed vehicles. She used this interesting statistic: 97% of the vehicles sit idle 97% of the time. So, but once we have this capacity to share vehicles, we don't need to own the vehicles. We can call it up when we need it, whether we need a pickup truck or a trip to the grocery store. This is going to happen, and what that's going to do is it's going to free up a lot of the urban space that's now dedicated for parking vehicles on streets. And this, you know, how we're going to integrate this into a trails network is going to be a real interesting challenge. But it may be a way for actually we get people out of the neighborhood into a more independent trails network.
So do you have any data on how how many of the trails are already there, and how many dots there are still to connect?
How many trails there are existing?
Yeah, it's like, or is that?
There is no inventory of trails in the state of California at the moment. Right now, we're estimating tens of thousands of miles existing. But, even Parks doesn't have an inventory of their trails. It's amazing how much of work has been done without a central organizing feature.
So that's part of the plan.
That is part of the plan, is let's just connect, let's take an inventory and then figure out how to connect them together, yes.
Are you guys engaging stakeholders? That's the
In Parks?
multi-layer complexity, well, like rails or trails, and we're familiar with those, and
Right.
outdoor industry recreation, and then you have the kind of the engineering crowd that you talked about.
Mhm.
What's your method to that madness right now? How are you guys doing that outreach? How you get to the
Well, we're staying in contact with everybody, and wherever we get traction, we pursue more. Like DOT Caltrans, they're working in theory, they're not ready to work in fact right at the moment. And it's just too big of a bureaucracy. There are people that are doing, and that, we're talking with them, but that's just the reality. Whereas Parks is just like, yes, they're. I have the director of the department on my speed dial number,
right, but how are you getting it out to the public?
Well, right now, we are not getting it out to the public. This is the problem. See, we've been working quietly within the system to get this political thing. Well, getting out to the public is through the conferences. But we are still at the moment trying to first organize the people who are already involved in it. So, because those people aren't speaking to each other. They're in their city or they're in their county. And just the fact of regional stuff, I mean, we've already had one director of one Parks district complain that we didn't let him know soon enough about what we were doing because it's a little turf thing. Oh my God, let's get beyond turf. Yeah.
Katie, I just wanted to tell you that somebody came through with a 3-minute warning.
Yeah. So we've got to kind of wrap this up. Is there any little final question that anybody has? Then let me just step right into my thing. We're changing the world. We're doing it. We're not talking about doing it. We're doing it. And we're doing it in the best, most calm, most peaceful, happy, progressive, and inclusive way possible. And we would love for you to be a part of it. You're welcome to be a part of our organization. You can form your own local chapter if you want to. You can bring your organization in as a partner. My contact, this is still at the moment being run through me mostly. My contact information is all over this literature up here. Come to the September 29th conference if you can.
When is it?
It's September 29th, Friday, September 29th, from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the Castro Valley Community Center, just a little bit outside of Hayward. And right now, we have a website. It's not very active. We're just volunteers, skeleton staff, minimal budget. But we've managed to accomplish this, yes. And so here, communicate with me. I'll be happy to connect people up. I'll be happy to help try to address the issues once I can see them more clearly.
I'm just gonna use your big name.
Okay.
And tell them, we're gonna keep what we have. You do
Well,
your thing, go do.
It'd help if you would do a description of what your situation is and write it out.
Well, they were gonna cut the end of this nice network and go right down the bay, and they were gonna
But-
take it into theirs. and
Right.
They can do that too, but they
Yeah.
don't mess with ours.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
So if you'll send that information to me, then I'll make sure that whenever I talk to somebody who's in that region, I mention this to them.
Well, I'll just ask, I'll give you a map and then
Okay.
ask if they
Yeah.
don't mess with something that's already
Yeah.
doing a good job.
So just imagine this huge map that I was going to have here that's going to have this network of
see it on the
trails
29th,
all
right.
over the
We'll be
state.
on the map.
We will be on the
And
map.
it was one of the first, it was really great, and Bart came in, they made it with real stop signs and everything. We went through their property.
Yep. So
So
that's
you're California Trails, and California Guild, what's?
The California Guild is the parent organization that has sponsored the resolution that was just passed. And we are also organizing and sponsoring the regional conferences to get the public organized and the professional public and the general public organized, so that when we have to go over, eventually when we're really hitting the wall for cap and trade funding, we've got a groundswell movement to go against this. Because we know cap and trade funding is going to be a huge political fight.
Yeah.
But, one victory it's the first victory that is always the hardest in any great movement. once you get that first victory, and we've got it under our belt, you know, and we're gonna do it. And come join us. Thank you.
Okay.